In front of me are 3 bottles of champagne at 3 radically different price points, and while these wines may look different, legally speaking, they should be exactly the same. In this video, I'm gonna reveal just how similar these wines really are. I'll explain the real reason why one of the bottles is priced 1,500% more than another. And then we're gonna find out if there's any way that this bottle is actually worth its price tag when we conduct a blind tasting of all 3. But first, why is there a law that dictates the need for these wines to be similar? To answer that, we need to go back to the year 1911 to the village of Epernay in Champagne, France. There we'll find a mob of pitchfork and torch-wielding grape farmers descending upon the main chateau of a historic champagne house, with the unmistakable intention to burn the entire thing to the ground. But why would these farmers want to harm the producers who buy their grapes and support their livelihoods? Because the last 10 years were the hardest the farmers had ever faced, and they were fed up. Their crops had been destroyed by a worldwide plague called phylloxera, which led champagne houses to import grapes from other countries to make champagne. This drove the price of the few grapes that survived down even further. On top of that, the weather earlier that year was the most damaging in a century, causing less than 10% of their crops to survive. Even more, the popularity of champagne was exploding across the world, leading wine producers in other countries to fraudulently label their wines as champagne, which caused confusion in the marketplace and drove the price of real champagne down even further. These farmers were now struggling to even feed themselves. And at that exact moment, reliable information came to light that some prominent champagne houses were colluding to fix prices for the grapes purchased from those farmers. So the farmers did break into the chateau. They ransacked the place, completely turning out the cellars and destroying priceless works of art in the process. The next day, the French government sent 40,000 troops into Champagne to restore order to the region. As a direct result of these riots, the Champagne government worked with both the grape farmers and the champagne houses to establish a set of laws that would serve the interests of both parties and protect the region from falling into chaos again. These laws included provisions like champagne must be made exclusively from grapes grown in, Champagne, and they also established a regulated and transparent classification system for grapes to prevent price fixing by the champagne houses. So with this law established, just how similar are these wines? To answer that question, we need to look at the different levers wine producers can use to create their unique wines. Let's look at winemaking as a simple system. In our system, we input grapes, process them, and our output is wine. The quality of that wine depends on the quality of the inputs and the quality of the processing. If we zoom in on the input, the levers of quality available to sparkling wine producers are the types of grapes, the location of the land where those grapes were grown, and the craftsmanship of the cultivation and harvesting practices. Then, if we zoom in on the processing, the levers of quality available to wine producers include things like the amount of juice extracted during pressing, the type and number of fermentations, blending, aging, riddling, and dosage. And I know those are some technical terms, but I'm gonna explain them in a minute, and they're pretty simple. So how similar are these wines then? Of the 9 primary levers available to wine producers to make their unique wine, French law sets aggressive minimum standards of quality for 8 of the 9. Let's quickly run through them. The type of grapes must be Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, or Pinot Meunier. All of these grapes must be grown in Champagne, France. There are strict rules on how densely the vines must be planted, how they are pruned, the yield from those vines, and the grapes must be hand harvested. As a comparison, there's no appellation anywhere in North America that requires hand harvesting, so it's a pretty strict requirement. Inside the winery, producers can't extract more than 9.8 ounces of juice from every pound of grapes, which, by the way, is quite strict. Compare that to the Prosecco region, where the law caps juice extraction at 11.5 ounces per pound. That's a 10.6 percentage point difference in grape concentration. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but let's look at another agricultural product. Milk. The difference between rich, delicious, creamy whole milk and flaccid, watery skim milk is only 3.5 percentage points of milk fat. So imagine how a 10.6 percentage point difference in juice concentration affects wine. The law sets the exact number and type of fermentations. It sets a minimum aging of 15 months, where 12 of those months must be on the lees, which is a very, froofy way to say indirect contact with the fermentation yeast. It mandates the wines must be riddled or rotated to collect the sediment from fermentation in the neck. And it defines the exact amount of sugar for these champagnes to be called brut. The only lever not regulated is blending. Wine producers are free to use any ratio of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier they wish. So how similar are these wines? Well, they're pretty dang similar, but not identical. Wine producers can choose to exceed the already aggressive minimum standards of quality. When they do, they're pretty proud of themselves and like to tell everyone about it. Veuve Clicquot exceeds on one lever with the minimum aging. They boast a 30-month minimum aging period, which is exactly double the minimum by law. Ace of Spades exceeds on 4 levers. They extract only 7.9 ounces of juice per pound of grapes. That's an additional 11.8 percentage points of grape juice. So that's a whole lot of whole milk energy. They age for a minimum of 36 months. They riddle the bottles by hand, and during dosage, they use a base wine that has been aged in oak barrels. The Costco champagne doesn't boast about exceeding any standards, so it's safe to assume they're employing the minimum. So then why does this bottle cost 1,500% more than this one? Clearly the reason is that it's aged longer, less juice is extracted, and someone rotates the bottles by hand, right? Case closed. I'll see you later. Not so fast. The real reason this one costs so much more has something to do with those improvements of quality, but that's not the full story. How do I know? Let's take a look at a different bottle. This is Le Grand Ennui from Bollinger. It adheres to the same extraction limit of 7.9 ounces of juice per pound of grapes. It's aged for a minimum of 7 years, and the entire aging process is completed in oak barrels, not just the little bit used during dosage. Oh, and it's a vintage champagne, which means all of the grapes in the bottle come from the same year, and this is considered a significant mark of quality in the champagne world because you get a truer sense of tasting the time and place. You know, champagne tasted like this in the year 2012. So what does a bottle of Le Grand Ennui run you? About 170 bucks. So what is it? How can the price of this bottle be so astronomically high? It's simple. The price of a bottle of wine is based on 3 things: the quality of the grapes that were input into the system, the quality of the winemaking process, and the brand reputation of the producer. Considering that Bollinger has better winemaking stats than the Ace of Spades, it all comes down to brand. So how can this gaudy gold-plated bottle have a higher brand reputation than Bollinger, which is famously James Bond's champagne of choice? I'll tell you how. Armand de Brignac, aka Ace of Spades, is owned by none other than multi-billionaire hip-hop legend, Jay-Z. Now, before you immediately jump to conclusions, this is just a total waste of money and you're just paying for the brand, I don't think that's totally true. I won't argue that it's probably not the best value, but it's clear that this wine has the highest markers of quality in this lineup. And to find another wine with comparable markers of quality, well, we would need to spend at least 170 bucks. So this thing has real chops. But can you taste those chops? So that brings us to the biggest question of all. Knowing everything we do about how similar these wines are and yet how radically differently they're priced, can you actually taste the difference? And if so, is this wine actually worth it? To answer that question, I'm gonna taste them completely blind while you get to see on screen exactly which wine is which. I'm gonna rank them in order of my preference, then we're gonna reveal them to see which one comes out on top. Are you ready? Let's get boozing. Okay. Woo! Woo! All right, we are ready to begin the blind tasting of these exquisite champagnes. I am gonna smell them all, and then I'm gonna taste them. I'm gonna give my impressions of what's different about them, and I'm gonna end by sharing whether or not I think that that final one is worth that amount of money. So let's start here. Okay, it's pretty. It has a lot of vanilla notes. All right, let's see what's going on with number 2. Okay, yeah, there's definitely a lot less going on in this glass than in this one. They're fundamentally pretty similar, but the key difference is how much more turned down this one is. So not the most interesting thing in the world to smell, if I'm honest. All right, let's check out the final one. Oh, wow. This one is, holy shit. This one has so much more character. Like, it is unbelievable how much more character is in this one. Wow. I'm speechless at how beautiful that smells. What is the real truth? So let's taste and find out. My initial impression is that I really like that. It is, to me, really what I would think of when I tell someone I'm in the mood for champagne. Like, it is a classic expression of champagne. It's even further reinforcing my belief that this is Veuve Clicquot, just based on how absolutely present its force of the taste of what my mind believes to be champagne is. Let's see what's in number 2, our least smelly one. I am even further convinced that this is the Costco one. It's quite good, but where this wine has an evolution, you begin to drink it and you immediately experience one taste, which is like the classic champagne taste, and then it lingers and evolves into these other beautiful tastes and flavors. This just kind of stays at that first note. Holy fuck, that smells good. Wow, okay. This is for sure the most complex of the 3. It has this like gorgeous, overripe grape complexity. It's like the feeling of depth. Like a dessert wine has this syrupy depth on your palate. And honestly, champagnes aren't really known for that. Also being effervescent and bright is super cool. That's a very unique experience. This is very, very interesting. Oh fuck, that's so good. Wow, I mean, that is really spectacular. I'm gonna stop being Dustin McQuaid wine guy. I'm gonna hang up all of my YouTube aspirations if this is not the Ace of Spades, because you can't trust my palate. It would just be such an obvious like, oh, don't trust that guy. Let me arrange these. Okay, left to right, I'm gonna switch the order of these because I do believe that this one. Okay, these are now in the order of my preference. This is my least favorite. This is my next favorite, and then this is the one that I think is the best. And it really is quite a bit better. I'm assuming this is the Costco one, this is the Veuve Clicquot. This being a 3 times bigger jump in price, like you can totally taste the difference. So let's reveal, let's find out which one was which. Oh yeah, all right. I get to stay on YouTube. Okay, I got them right. Okay, so this is the Costco champagne, this is the Veuve Clicquot, and this is the Ace of Spades. Oh, yay! That's fantastic news. So to wrap this up, honestly, the answer to the question is, you know, it depends. If you can afford it, if you are the sort of person that has so much disposable income that this can become your daily drinking champagne, you should buy it. It's really, really good. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think it's kind of worth it. And if you're the sort of person that values having money to feed your children or, you know, send them to college or be able to pay your rent or mortgage, this probably isn't the right choice. For that, I highly recommend this wine. For times when you want real champagne but are balking at what is, you know, typically $60 a bottle, this fucking rocks. And hey there, real quick, I just wanted to say that hopefully this video has been providing value for you. And if it has, it would mean the world to me if you would consider liking the video, and even more if you would consider subscribing to get more of this kind of content. I am on a warpath to honestly just incinerate all of my disposable income to buy the most ridiculous wines and taste them against their contemporaries to find out which ones are the best. But ultimately, you don't have the full picture on this wine yet. The way it tastes is just one piece of the puzzle. If you really want to have something interesting to share with your friends when y'all hang out next, check out this video to get the wild story behind how Jay-Z came to own one of the oldest champagne houses in France. And ultimately, how it compares against another gold-plated bottle that costs 10 times less.